Are the Boston Celtics the team to beat in the Eastern Conference? After a pretty rough start to the season, the Boston Celtics have an 8-2 record in their last 10 games and are currently one game out of the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But quickly before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports, I make opinionative NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. But anyways, let's get into it.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics.
At the beginning of the season, the Boston Celtics were struggling. They just hired new head coach Ime Udoka, and a lot of the players on the team were still figuring out how to run his new offense. Some players on the team just weren't playing as well as they did in the past, especially Jaylen Brown, who wasn't having a great start to the season. The Celtics were struggling defensively. They weren't necessarily running crisp offensive sets either. People were questioning if Ime Udoka was the right head coach for the Celtics, and overall the Celtics were just a mess early on. And it certainly took the Celtics some time to figure things out, but it seems like around the NBA trade deadline is where the Celtics started to turn things around. During the trade deadline, the Celtics were able to acquire Derek White in a trade from the San Antonio Spurs, and it seems like he was the absolute perfect fit for the Celtics roster. But there's a few different reasons for why I personally think Derek White was such a perfect fit for the Celtics roster. The first reason is the Celtics were now adding another additional ball handler that had the ability not only to score for himself, but also playmake a little bit as well, which is something the Celtics desperately needed. And another factor offensively is Derek White wasn't necessarily known as a three-point shooter in the past when he played for the Spurs, and still isn't necessarily known for being a great three-point shooter now, but honestly Derek White does a pretty nice job at spreading the floor out for guys like Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and certainly has the ability to hit the occasional catch-and-shoot three-point jump shot. But probably the biggest factor for why Derek was such a great fit for the Celtics roster was the fact that he's such a great individual defender, but not only is he a great individual defender, he's also a phenomenal team defender as well. And whenever you add a great defender like Derek is, it always adds a huge benefit to your roster, and I think we saw the benefits from Derek White's defense on the Celtics team ever since they traded for him. But of course, one player isn't necessarily going to turn things around for the Celtics, and other players really needed to step up, and they certainly did. Jayson Tatum was one of those guys that really took his game to the next level. He wasn't necessarily having a bad season at the start, but maybe he was having a mediocre season for his standards, but really ever since the trade deadline, and especially as of late, Jayson Tatum has really taken his game to the next level. When you look at his stats on the season, Jayson's averaging around 27 points per game on 45% shooting, 8 rebounds, and 4.3 assists. But when you look at his more recent games, Jayson put up 44, 31, 21, 26, 32, 30, 36, 26, 34. But just like it is for a lot of star players, even besides the phenomenal numbers that Jayson's putting up, when you actually watch him on the court, he's playing very winning basketball as well. I think we all know that Jayson has a phenomenal three-point jump shot, and he clearly has the ability to spread the floor by catch and shoot. He also has the ability to cross over into a three-point jump shot, sidestep, and step back. From that mid-range area, Jayson is arguably even better than his three-point shot. Of course, he has a really nice pull-up mid-range jump shot, has a phenomenal post turnaround fadeaway within his game as well. Of course, could run the pick and roll and pick and pop and easily just put up a nice little floater. Driving all the way to the basket, Tatum is also very prolific at dunking over players with his great wingspan, size, and athleticism. Also has a very nice job at putting up creative layups around the basket, around whatever defender's there. And overall, in terms of his scoring ability, Jayson is obviously one of the better players in the NBA at that. But the great thing about Jayson Tatum is I don't necessarily think all that many people talk about this, but besides his phenomenal scoring ability, Jayson also does a pretty nice job at finding his teammates and getting them open looks as well. Of course, when you're as great of a scorer as Jayson Tatum is, there's going to be a bunch of times out there in the court that you're getting doubled and sometimes even triple teamed, and when that happens, Jayson clearly has the ability to find open guys either in the corner for a wide open shot or driving all the way to the basket for an easy dunk or layup. And overall, the fact that Jayson has that passing and playmaking ability into his game just makes the Celtics offense a lot more dynamic overall, and whatever team is defending them just makes it that much more difficult. So overall, the elevated play of Jayson Tatum as of late is certainly one of the biggest reasons, probably the main reason for the Celtics' great play as of late. Now, another big reason for why the Celtics are playing so much better as of late is the elevated play of Jaylen Jaylen Brown as well. Now, at the beginning of the season, Jaylen was certainly struggling a little bit, and when you actually look at his numbers this season compared to last season, they're actually worse, even though he's been playing at a much higher rate as of late, which kind of just shows you how much he was struggling at the beginning of the year. But on the year, Jaylen is averaging around 23 points per game on 46% shooting, 6.1 rebounds, and 3.2 assists, which of course are still phenomenal numbers, but they're just a little bit worse than they were last year, but they are nominally worse. But when you look at the games as of late for Jaylen, he's been playing much better, having games like 30, 30, 25, 26, and 31 as of late. And I think the main formula for the Celtics is if both of their main guys in Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown are playing as well as they have been playing as of late, it's going to be very, very difficult to beat the Celtics team. And I think we've certainly seen that in terms of the amount of wins that the Celtics have been getting in the second half of this year. Now, also another player that's been playing very well for the Celtics as well has been Robert Williams. He's not necessarily a guy that's going to put up crazy numbers. He just does a great job at playing great individual defense in terms of being a great defensive anchor for you. He's one of the top players in the league in terms of block shots. He does a phenomenal job of just contesting around the basket in general. He's also a very, very good rebounder as well. And on the offensive side, he doesn't necessarily have all that many skills, but he's just basically a pick and lob kind of player offensively. But honestly, based upon the fact that the Celtics already have so many individual scorers on their team, they don't necessarily need their center to be able to score that much. So I think he fits in with the Celtics team pretty well. And overall, when you just look at a bunch of different players on their team, I think everybody's just fitting in very nicely right now for the Celtics, and everything's just working very well for them. But now let's get into the question of the video, which is, are the Celtics the actual team to beat in the Eastern Conference now? Now, it may sound a little ridiculous to say that the team to beat in the East is the team that's only the 4th seed, but of course, as I mentioned before in the video, the Celtics were just the number 1 seed a few days ago, and either way, they're only one game back from that number 1 spot, but overall, it's been pretty clear that the Celtics have been one of the hotter teams in the NBA in general. But honestly, at this point, I think the Celtics are the team to beat in the East, not necessarily saying because the Celtics are the best team in the Eastern Conference, but just when you look at the other teams in the East, at this point, a lot of teams are struggling a little bit. When you look at the number 1 seed Miami Heat, as of late, they are struggling a little bit. The Sixers aren't necessarily playing as well as they were originally when they got James Harden. The Bucks are playing pretty well, I will say that. And when you look at a team like the Chicago Bulls, who had a very good start to the season, they've fallen off a little bit, partly due to some injuries, but overall they've fallen off a little bit. And I think all the teams under them, the Celtics are clearly better than all those teams. So honestly, at this point, I really do think the Celtics are the team to beat in the Eastern Conference at this point. Now, the big question for the Celtics is they don't necessarily care if they're the team to beat or not at this point. The real main goal for them is to win an NBA championship. So how likely are they to actually doing so this season? Now, of course, it's always very difficult to win an NBA championship, but I think it's even more so now due to the fact that the Eastern Conference has gotten so much better than it was in the past. And honestly, I think teams like the Heat, Sixers, Bucks, Nets, and even potentially the Chicago Bulls could give the Celtics some trouble. But of course, with the top end talent that they have, the Celtics could clearly beat any one of those teams that I mentioned. The biggest key for them is just their main 2 guys have to play very well during the entire playoffs, basically. But if they are able to do that, I think they clearly have the talent to make it out of the Eastern Conference. And if they do that, of course, they have the capability to win an NBA championship this season. Now, I will say my current pick to win the NBA championship is not necessarily the Boston Celtics at this point, but at the same time, with the top end talent that they have, of course, as I mentioned, I certainly could see them doing so. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Boston Celtics could potentially win the NBA championship this season, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now. And until the next time, peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.